What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Epictastic Nation. That is the channel. This is Joshua Drake, continuing the road to Superman with my review of Supergirl. This is directed by the now delayed Jeannot Szwarc. This stars Helen Slater as the title character. Also, you got Faye Dunaway and Peter O'Toole, also Brenda Vaccaro. This is the fourth entry, or technically fifth entry if you choose to count it. And this is a side story between Superman 3 and Superman 4. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. Kara of Argo City poses as Clark Kent's cousin Linda Lee to recover the Omegahedron from an evil Terran sorceress. Let's talk about this one, because this was the one I was extremely dreading to watch. Because if you saw my review of this 7 to 8 years ago now, you know that I was not the biggest fan of the movie. I call this one of the worst movies ever. I call it one of the worst things ever. I called it pretty much every bad name in the book. And truth be told, I just thought it was a pretty terrible way to make a Supergirl movie. But I was excited to rewatch this because I wanted to see how my thoughts would hold up. Would I still hate this movie, or will I still enjoy this for what it was? And the production of this movie came around after Superman 3.
Having made Superman 3, we felt that we didn't have the energy or the desire to make yet another Superman film. That was really both Ilya's and my feeling. His father then said, okay, well, if you guys don't make it, someone's gonna make it, and we're just not gonna let the property sleep.
When Superman 3 came out and not did very well, they were pretty terrified when it comes to this, because this easily could have been one of the worst movies ever made. And for that reason, a lot of people didn't really have a lot of hope when it comes to this movie. And even the Salkinds didn't have much hope when it comes to this movie. It's kind of well documented in this clip of the Look Up in the Sky documentary from Helen Slater.
I did a movie after Supergirl called The Legend of Billie Jean, and even in that film, they got it a little bit more right about an 18-year-old, 17-year-old going through certain rites of passage, and I felt like in Supergirl, they were shying away from it, I think just because there was so much money in the film and so much kind of expectation, they couldn't really explore a girl's journey, and my wish is that now they would revisit that kind of story and find a way to tell it with depth and humor and a story that you can actually follow.
Not only that, this movie was supposed to be a movie to be something completely different in the Superman franchise with Christopher Reeve, and they were also going to have Christopher Reeve make a cameo in this, but he pretty much declined.
Part of the concept was that Superman is her cousin, and when she comes to Earth, he's there to kind of welcome her. And 3 months before we started shooting, Christopher just didn't feel right about being in the picture at all. So that part of it disappeared. And that was a big regret for me, because I really felt that it made it special.
In the initial script, I was the only one in there. And I kind of was wondering whether is Supergirl Superman's sister? And I was curious with Jeannot. I said, when I see her, shouldn't I mention Superman, or should there be some kind of connection? He goes, no, this is her world. And it got to a point where, why was I there?
This movie came out and it did not impress either audiences or critics, and this ended up becoming a box office bomb in 1984.
But you know, the film didn't do well, except in some territories. It didn't meet our expectations. I don't think we missed. I think it wasn't what people expected.
And the failure of this first ever Supergirl film led the Salkinds to sell the Superman rights back to canon in 1986, which was a pretty big mistake on their parts. Fortunately, this movie has been garnered as a cult classic, and the character would get better reception with animated stuff like the Justice League trilogy and also Legion of Superheroes with Meg Donnelly, and also her appearances in Superman, Batman Apocalypse, and also Superman Unbound. And we got a pretty solid TV show with the lovely, sexy Melissa Benoist, which I still love that show. And Melissa will always be my favorite version of Supergirl.
Kick-ass. You feel love for her.
No. Fortunately, we are getting a second chance at doing this character justice with Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow next year, with Millie Alcock as Supergirl. I'm very curious to see how she's gonna do it. So going into this, I was excited to rewatch this, but I was dreading this because I was like, okay, this will go either one way. This can either be really good or this can be pretty bad here. So having rewatched Supergirl, this is what I can say. This is not a good movie by any source of the imagination. I wouldn't even say it's an underrated gem. But this is a movie that I know is bad, but for some reason, I kind of enjoyed myself this time around. Like I said, this is not a great movie. And I still think this is a pretty bad film. But you know what? It's tolerable, okay? And this time I watched the international cuts for a watch. So it's slightly better than I remember it being. Because at least now I knew what to expect and going into it. And as a Supergirl fan, I did enjoy this more than I remember it being. Easily, I will say the best part of this movie is Helen Slater as Supergirl. I think she gives a fantastic performance for her first ever film. She was only 18 at the time when she booked the part. And she also said that this was going to be her big break, and she made a hell of a good impression. I think some of the criticisms for her portrayal is unfair in terms of her being wide-eyed and so.
When I auditioned for the movie, it was all the same people involved, the Salkins and Timothy Burrell and Alf Joint, who trained me for Supergirl. That was Chris's same guy. All the people where I learned how to fly, those were all the same people that had worked with Chris and on the Superman movies. So there were a lot of similar crossover.
It's more of a screenplay thing more than an acting thing. But for the first ever Supergirl to be in live action and theatrical, I think she does a very strong job in the role. She does make her mark and she does leave an impression. Now, originally, they wanted actors like Brooke Shields to do the part of Supergirl, but she said no. And they wanted Demi Moore to audition, and she was wanted to be cast as Lucy Lane, but she left to make the movie Blame It on Rio, which that would have been interesting to see either one of them to play the characters there. And also, I liked what Helen brings to it. Now, she's not my favorite Supergirl, but I will say of the live-action Supergirl and the multiple interpretations with Melissa Benoist and Sasha Calle and such, I think Helen makes her mark. And for the first ever female-led superhero movie, I think she does a fine job here. She's fun, she's expressive, she does have a sense of wonder and joy, and she enjoys playing this part. I would have liked to have seen what she could have done if she had 2 more movies, because this was supposed to be a 3-picture deal. But for this one movie, at least I would say she did a good enough job. Also, it helps that, just like in the Supergirl suit, if you thought Melissa Benoist and Sasha Calle was gorgeous in that suit, if you think Millie Alcock is going to be beautiful in the suit, whew, man, Helen Slater fine as hell in this movie. I just have to say it, because Melissa's gorgeous in the TV show as the character, but Helen Slater, damn, like.
You are a badass.
On. I'm just saying.
I get it.
No.
I get it.
I listen. A snug.
Give us a smooch, you big ugly ball bag.
I will also say there's first time for everything, and she makes the suit and the character her own. Say Jeannot Szwarc and his direction is a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to it, because when it comes to times here where it gets to some heartfelt moments and action, he does that pretty well. And he's able to try and capture the same level of feel as the Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve ones, which this one's going for something a little more different. So I do like the fact that he was trying to go for that type of film. So I'll say he does a good job in what he has to do, and he makes it his own. So I actually really do like what he was able to go on here, and he makes it fun, and he makes it his own in terms of the direction. In some parts, when it comes to the villain and such, it's good and bad, but we'll go to that in the mixers. But it's competent enough for what it wants to be. There are some moments of action here to make this watchable, and even though some of it is a little bit ridiculous in parts, I will say this now, I think that the performance and the acting is actually not too bad from when it comes to some of these performances here. Some of the action is a little bit ridiculous and too stupid at times, but honestly, I got some enjoyment out of it. That was one of the things I really had fun with here. Production design and some of the effects are also fine for the budget that they have, so I actually really don't mind that part of things. I think for the budget that they had, they do a fine job for what is given here. Jerry Goldsmith's score is also another standout next to Helen Slater. So I really do like when it comes to the filmmaking and when it comes to the score. Just you do try to copy the opening titles of the first two Superman films, but I think Jerry Goldsmith's Supergirl theme is awesome. I think it's genuinely underrated. And I actually really have fun listening to the score here. And also some of the performances in this movie, I think, are very good enough here. Like actors like Brenda Vaccaro is Bianca, Mia Farrow as Allura NZ. You have Hart Bochner as Ethan, Peter Cook as Nigel, Mark McClure and Maureen Tefe as Jimmy Olsen and Lucy Lane. So I really do like a lot of the performances in here. There's some that are but we'll go into that. So those are the things I actually do like in this movie. I will say in terms of the mix aspects here, I'm mixed on some of the directing. Again, I praise the director's choices, the late Jeannot Szwarc. He does fine for what he's given when it comes to the directing. So I definitely have to give him credit for that. But there's also some moments in this where I feel like when it comes to the villain and when it comes to some of the goofy stuff here, which I get what Jeannot Szwarc is going for and what these screenwriters are going for, but it just gets to a point where some of it is a little bit overbearing and some of it can be a little bit too ridiculous as well. And so that's also something I think could have been a little bit fixer-upper in some of the writing here. The story is also a mixed bag, because while I get this is an origin story, and they definitely really have some fun when it comes to the origin of this movie, and they really do use it in terms of how they were able to handle it. There are some moments in the story taking place in the events of Superman 3 and Superman 4. There is another half of this movie in terms of Selena, where there's moments where I liked her story and where I dig some of the story. There's also moments where it feels like it goes so ridiculous at points where it feels like I'm watching Madam Web again. Some moments it goes into that silly sci-fi TV network channel movie of the week territory. I'm also mixed on Peter O'Toole here, because while the guy was a legendary Oscar caliber great, beloved actor. And he's fine for what he is given here. There's moments where he feels like he's in a completely different movie in terms of this. And he takes this very serious like Shakespeare, and I'm like, it doesn't fit here. It kind of feels like some of it is making me laugh, but also some of it is like, this is not the appropriate movie for that type of decision. So I will say that's one aspect of the movie I actually don't mind when it comes to it. So that's something I felt could have been done a bit better in terms of that. Now let's go into the criticisms here. This script is not always the best in terms of the way it chooses to handle this origin of Kara. Now, I know this is not Christopher Reeve's type of movie, so I can't really necessarily say I hate the way they do the origin here, and I give credit to where credit is due, granted. But it feels like there are a lot of parts in this origin missing. With her as a kid, her first getting her powers in a teenager way, where she's a teenager going to school. So it feels like we've glossed over that. And I get Supergirl is different from Superman, but it feels like there are moments here, I can't really describe it. It's like someone kind of botched into the script a little bit. And it feels like, no, this doesn't work here. The tone of this movie also is another big problem when it comes to it, because on one end, you get what you're going for. I get what this movie is trying to do in terms of its tone, and I appreciate it. Just some of this tone does not work for this movie here in parts. There's moments where it wants to be light and it wants to be very campy with it and be very over the top with it. There are moments here where it kind of forgets what tone is supposed to be when you have Selena show up and the dark magic. And some of the romance here is a little bit campy in parts, but it's campy in the good kind of way. It's not campy like you're watching 365 Days or After campy. It's a cute kind of campy, but it's not the best campy here. The biggest flaw of this movie is to why I hated this movie. We gotta address it. The fucking villain. Oh my god. What the fuck is this villain?
Oh crap.
You should be ashamed of yourself!
I mean no disrespect to Faye Dunaway. She is an Oscar caliber actress from what I've heard, and from the little that I've seen of her in Chinatown and a few others, I respect her as a respectable legend of old Hollywood, and she deserves her flowers. She deserves her praise for her great accomplishments. But make no mistake, this is single-handedly, without the shadow of a doubt, one of the worst villain performances I've ever seen. And it gets to a point where it's not only headache-inducing, but it feels most laughable and extremely irritating performances I've ever seen from a movie villain. To the point where Selena is acting like a fucking villain you will see on the Disney Channel original movies in the early 2000s, or DC's version of their own iCarly's Neville Papperman. Except you take Neville Papperman and you take one of those villains from a Disney Channel original movie, and what do? You choke her up to 2,000. And that really is severely over the top here. My God. There's moments where I can laugh at some of the villainy stuff, but there is also moments here where, granted, she's going for it, and I give her credit that she's going for it. It just feels like she is in a different movie as opposed to everyone else. I can blame this a bit on the writing and as much as the direction. So it's a mix of both here. and also a little bit of some of her directing choice. I'm like, if this was a hilariously, ridiculously over-the-top movie, I would roll with it. But because this is a Supergirl movie, this villain is just pretty bad. It kind of makes me want to see how Jason Momoa is going to turn out as Lobo, even though I'm pretty skeptical about it because Lobo is an anti-hero. While I don't necessarily have a problem with anti-heroes, it's just half of the time they don't know what to do with these anti-heroes. You either make them good or make them bad. I'm going to pick a side. But overall, shocker. This rewatch of Supergirl made me enjoy it a lot more than I did 7 years ago when I first reviewed this on YouTube. Now, is this a good movie? Hell no. Is this a movie that I still hate as much as I do? Not really. I still don't like this movie all that much, but I can't sit here and say it's one of the worst DC movies ever made anymore. It's definitely one of my least favorites, but it's nowhere near the worst. I'm looking at you, Green Lantern, Jonah Hex, Superman 4, and a few others. Yeah, you're the ones to blame. Because at least on this rewatch, I've given this movie enough time and the wounds has healed from some of my first experience. And we're getting another chance with her with Millie Alcock. And like I said, we have some animated versions that's been pretty solid. And also, Melissa, she made one hell of a Supergirl. So I gotta give her that. Can I say this is a guilty pleasure now? Absolutely. I'll say it's a guilty pleasure. You're damn right. But don't get me wrong, I don't love this movie or anything, but I'm at peace now to where I can pop it in and I can get some laughs out of it. And while I can see what they were trying to do for the time, it just doesn't come together in the way they wanted it for. Now, granted, Helen Slater makes this watchable. I like some of the direction, I like some of the cast, I like some of the campiness, and I can enjoy it for what it is. It just doesn't fully come together in the way the filmmakers wanted to. And it's kind of a shame because I feel like if there was a lot more trust and faith put into this like Helen Slater wished it did, I think this would have gotten much better results. But we're getting another movie and I'm excited to see what she does. And this is no longer the worst female-led superhero movie of all time because Madam Web, you've earned your place in hell with that spot. It's not good. This movie's not good, but I'm at peace with it. And for that reason, I'm going to give this 2 grades. As a guilty pleasure, as an Epictastic, as an overall film, this is a skip it. But as an overall grade, I'm going to give this a middle badly. To tell the truth. If you are a fan of Superman or Supergirl, this is an interesting watch. Go in and form your own opinion. A lot of you have said this is one of the worst things ever, but if you've never seen it, give it a first shake. You may like it. So in the comment section down below, what did you guys think of Supergirl in 1984? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Or are you somewhere right in the middle? All my social media links in the description box down below, as well as my Cash App or Chime if you'd like to send me any money there. All my social media links in the description box down below. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can definitely do that as well. And be sure to give this a 5-star grade. So with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. As always, stay Epictastic, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. If you want to see more, my channel icon is up here. If you want to see more content from me, all my social medias are right here in this end card. I will also leave a playlist and a video here for you to see what the channel is about. As always, acknowledge me, stay Epictastic, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.